Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Unsecurity Podcast. I'm your host, Oscar Meeks, joined, as always, by the wonderful Brad Nye. And today we also have a special guest, Shawn Pollard. Brad, how you doing today?
Good. I've got to talk about weather. It warmed up. It got really cold here for a couple of days. It was like 11 with a wind chill of 2 at the bus stop on Monday. I was like, I'm not ready for that. But it's
Yeah,
really today. It's much better.
yeah.
Hey, there's not a foot of snow on the ground. I'm happy.
Yeah, it's wonderful. We always have to talk weather, Shawn. I feel like when we kick this off, I kind of poke at Brad about it sometimes, but it's fun to get the weather update. It's beautiful here in Kentucky today. It's like 50 degrees out, a little windy, but a gorgeous day. And kind of like you're saying, we got a really cold snap for Kentucky in November a couple days ago. It was like high was below 30 and our lows were 15 overnight. And so it was a chilly couple of days, but warmed back up nicely. And it actually looks like I'm going to have some great fishing weather this weekend. It's going to be close to 60. And so making plans to get the boat on the river and hopefully catch some fish.
They pull all the docks out in the third week of October.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was talking to Dave, his husband of one of our sales associates, and he was just talking about that. We were out fishing actually in October on Lake Minnetonka, and he was like, only got a few more weeks and then the docks are gone. And so I can tell it's a real point of sadness for Minnesotans, and I could relate.
Because the ice isn't thick enough to ice fish.
Right.
But you're stuck. Nothing you can do.
Shawn, how you doing today, man?
Doing well. Yeah. It's Q4. People are super busy. Lots of stuff going on, but a lot of good stuff going on.
Good.
Yep.
Yeah, so Shawn is one of our senior security consultants and leads here at FRSecure. How long have you been with us now, Shawn?
About 5.5.
Yeah.
I was going to say 5, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Time flies when you're having fun. But yeah,
It does.
Happy and thankful to have you on the show today, Shawn. We are going to dig in. Shawn is our in-house CMMC expert. He recently completed his CCP, which is a Certified CMMC Security Professional. So congratulations on that, Shawn. And we'll dig into everything CMMC today.
I don't know if I would congratulate him or feel bad for him for wonder about his sanity after doing that.
My wife wonders every day, so it's okay.
There you go.
I don't think you're living life right if you don't at least have someone question your sanity regularly. I think that's a healthy part of living.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. We always like to kick off with any announcements or news or things like that. I don't know, Brad, do you have anything to share today?
Yeah, so something that we just came out with, free resource. It's not gated in any way. Is our business impact analysis starter kit. Megan did a lot of really good work on that. She's been, trying to work on that for. Again, I'm gonna question her sanity that she got all in super engaged and excited about business impact analysis, but she did a phenomenal job. It's got kind of walkthrough of all the things you need to do, how to do them, and the tools to successfully accomplish it. So if you don't have a business impact analysis or it's old, go to our website. I'm sure we'll get this out in the show notes. We'll make sure marketing gets the link to that as well. But it's a really, really good resource if you don't have anything and you just don't know where to start.
Yeah, very cool. And I have worked through, so we did our own business impact analysis this year using Megan's template here in her kit that she's created. And it was a fantastic exercise for us. It's very comprehensive. She's done a fantastic job putting that together. So if you're in need of a BIA, I'd say start there.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a lot of customers, when they think about DR, they get stuck there, right? And they're like, okay, well, I can recover my servers, but I really don't understand the BIA part. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Cool. So I want to just share one tidbit of news. I don't know if you guys have heard, but there's been a couple of attacks on water municipalities that we believe sourced from an Iranian hacktivist group known as Cyber Avengers. And CISA put out a subsequent warning following up to that, specifically to the exploitation of Unitronics PLC devices. In this case, I know at least the Pennsylvania case, the compromise was a result of the HMI, which is the human machine interface. Think of that as like the virtual interface that administrators or programmers can use to interact with that PLC, was available on the internet. don't do that. And also had a weak password is what was stated, but I see that CISA specifically says change your default passwords. And so while a default password is a weak password, we're unsure if they had the default password enabled or if it was just a weak password. But yeah, be aware of that. Don't put these things on the internet. We talk about that a lot. If you must put these interfaces on the internet, make sure you have multi-factor authentication, strong credentials, and strong access controls in place. And just use strong passwords in MFA in general, right?
Well, there's no reason to put them on the internet. Put them behind a VPN.
Mm-hmm.
You need to access them remotely, connected through a VPN.
Yeah. Yeah, it blows my mind. It's always just for ease of use. We see that, right? So it adds a layer of complication. Someone pushes back because they don't want to go through 2 layers of authentication to get to a device. And so someone makes a poor decision, makes these devices available. Boom, they're exploited. Yeah. I will say, and I think, Brad, you know more about the Texas one. In Pennsylvania, the good news was there was no risk to the public. It seems like this was quickly identified. They took the PLC or the HMI offline and switched to manual operation. So people in the Raccoon and Potter townships in Pennsylvania, the water's still safe to consume, from what I understand. Is that the same in Texas, Brad?
Yeah, they said the comment was that their core water, wastewater, and solid waste services to member cities and customers have not been impacted by the incident.
Okay.
But their phones were offline at that point. But they didn't really say there wasn't a whole lot else that I've seen about the Texas one. Like, that was big. They serve, 2.2 million people? So
wow,
that's a lot of people.
Wow,
that is. Yep. Yeah, and we're lucky in these particular incidents here that there was no impact to the civilians in those townships and districts. But this is just an example. Like, because there was no impact in this situation doesn't mean there won't be any impact in the next situation. So I hope that this can implement a sense of urgency for people working in these municipalities. To make sure that they're properly securing those devices.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So let's get to Shawn talking CMMC stuff today. Shawn, we mentioned your CCP. I don't know if you just want to tell the audience. I know you've been on here before. Seems like it was a long time ago. If you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So started my IT career in the Air Force back in '89. I'm not going to do the math. We'll just say it's a long time. And it was interesting. I had a top secret security clearance, and part of my job was mainframe ops, and part of it was classified comm. And if I fast forward it, here I am doing security in IT, and it's really a mix of both those things that at that time was separate. And kind of my passion around CMMC is I get to go back and assist that group that I was working with, 30 some years ago, and having the opportunity, we phrase it like this, is protecting the warfighter. And honestly, that just puts a chill right up my spine, just thinking about, somebody in the field whose data is protected or their systems are protected better because of what the DoD and the group of manufacturers that are making all those things that they're using every day. That's really awesome, the opportunity to do that. So I gravitated there pretty easily, and kind of like Brad said, it might be a little crazy, but being able to help those folks is awesome.
Well, I'm not the CMMC expert you are. I just have the registered practitioner. But what the nice thing is unlike a lot of these guidelines and regulations, this is pretty prescriptive. Like, there's not a lot of gray area in 800-171. Right. It's like, no, you have to do these things, and here's how you do them. It's not interpreting and saying, well, what is required? I don't know. This is my interpretation. So would you agree about that, or?
Yeah, I would. And maybe that brings up a point is if you're starting to work with somebody who's telling you that things are easy and this is going to be a quick fix, they're completely lying to you. There's no way. I've seen advertisements that said CMMC in 60 or 90 days. It's just completely stupid, right? And so Brad mentioned 171. The correlation of 171 to CMMC, it's 1-to-1. So CMMC level 2 is and will always be, at least for the foreseeable future the same. So you can go to 171, those controls will absolutely map directly to CMMC. That's
Yeah,
a
I'm
good
glad
point.
you cleared that up. That was going to be a question I was going to ask. Can you explain the relation of 171 to CMMC? Then you brought up another point I wanted to talk about as well. So there are 3 different levels, and maybe a lot of folks don't understand what those different levels are and who those levels may apply to.
Right. And the easy way to look at that is if you have CUI, which is controlled but unclassified information, you're going to be a level 2. And those folks that don't have that still have a CMMC compliance, likely you're going to be at level 1. And really the interesting part of this is we have customers that don't know if they have either, but they see it in a contract and they don't know. So we can assist you in trying to figure that out. So ultimately what we try to do is understand, we start with the contract, start with your contracting, go next to your contracting officer, and ask them the questions. What do I have? What is my level of compliance? I see it in the contract, but I don't know what level. Most likely you're not going to see a lot of CMMC language yet, although we have, which is interesting because officially CMMC doesn't exist.
No.
Because until its final rule, it's nothing. Most contracts instead will refer to NIST 800-171. And like Brad said, it's exactly the same as level 2. And those requirements are laid out very clearly. So again, the other thing you can do is look at your system. Look for the term CUI, or there's other like no foreign and other specialty types of CUI that you can look for. If you look through your system, you may find those. Now, again, because we're working with the government, it's not hard to believe that they don't always label their stuff correctly or communicate out what it is. And so I think they're getting a lot better. As of 1/1 of 23, they have internal directives to get that right. So anything that comes out the door of the DoD has to be labeled correctly. The IG did a major internal review of that and really put their foot down and said, nobody's going to get anything right if we don't label it correctly. And so good news, they're doing better at that. Now, there's still stuff trickling around. Obviously that's older than that and we got to deal with it. But once we know what we have, again, if it's CUI, we're going to be at level 2. Where do we start, right? If we know we've got the requirement, really just, again, understanding where it is and trying to get our arms around where does it have to be. Any compliance, we have a general philosophy of fast and cheap, right? Let's do this effectively, but as fast as we can and as least expense. Because we know that compliance doesn't equal good broad security. And I know guys on the call could talk for probably 2 hours on that. But in general, they don't. And so, again, the question is, if I know I have CUI, how do I make that as small as possible, meaning where it's going to be used, and then wrap our arms around that and contain that, right, both physically and virtually, and make sure nobody else can get at it, meaning isolated networks. I think the term enclave is a good descriptor of that. And so, again, we've got it small, we've got it contained, and now we can secure it as quickly and as inexpensively as possible. So that's kind of the goal from my perspective.
Sounds like basic security. Hey, segment your sensitive information. Huh. Now,
yeah, 101, right?
Right.
It's difficult though, and what we're seeing is typically 18 to 24 months to fully get there. And so, like I said a little bit ago, CMMC is not an official thing yet, right? And so, if we look at the timeline, CMMC has been in the works for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. So this is not new. This has been around in concept for a long time. And so I'm just going to read off a little bit of the timeline. It's OIRA, Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, is doing final review of it. That's going to get published. It can go into 2 forms at that point. It can be a proposed rule or an interim final rule. If it's proposed rule, and that's what they're anticipating it will be, and that should go probably in December. It'll get into that state. They have effectively a year for public comment. The DoD will wrap around that, their responses to that, and then it becomes final rule typically. Now, again, this is government, so I don't know if typical helps us much, but in theory, about a year. So then you'll see it starting to show up in contracts in Q1 25. And then it'll have a graduated implementation in contracts until 2028. Every contract will require it from the DoD that has CUI. So that looks like a long time frame, but what I want people to consider is, again, that's a graduated implementation. You might be in the first swing of this thing. We don't know. And like I said a little bit ago too, is that it's an 18 to 24 month cycle to work through all the controls, policy procedures, physical requirements, technical requirements. It's a heavy lift, and it costs a lot of money.
Collecting evidence and having that evidence history. I want to go back to the levels real quick. And
Yeah.
So the level 2 is where we expect a majority of people to follow. That's where you're going to have a auditor, CMMC certified audit company come in and do that. What is the difference with a level 1 to that, and then a level 3? Is there a different number of controls, or is it just what's expected from that perspective?
Excellent question. So the difference between CMMC level 1, 17 controls, and then those controls break into objectives. And I don't remember the total number of objectives out of the 17 controls. So I always get concerned, though, when people say, well, that's a lot easier. And they, using the term easy in these controls, it is really a bad idea. I've heard it from sales folks. I've heard it from vendors. Yeah, if you just have CMMC level 1, that's easy. It is not easy. It's still a heavy lift. And I want people to be very, very cautious about that. Like even the physical security that has to be in place is almost identical from level 1 to level 2. Now, doesn't that blow your mind?
Mm-hmm. The biggest thing with the level 1 is you can do self audits, right? Self-assessment on that one.
Self-assessment, right.
But you better be damn sure you got it right, because if they audit you and you're wrong, guess what? You're losing that contract, even if, right?
Yeah.
So,
and typically that would come out in a breach, right? So if they have a breach and they have to identify it and self-report, right? Because there's a hotline that we have for CMMC. And like you said, if it comes back that you lied on that self-assessment, you likely get turned over to DOJ. I can't say for sure, but it's not going to go well.
Well, you're definitely not getting more contracts, that's for sure.
That's the absolute truth, yeah. And that's really with level 2 as well. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, just a quick comment and another question, clarification question.
Yeah.
And I agree with your statement, what you said a few minutes ago, that I think we all kind of agree compliance isn't security necessarily, but that doesn't mean compliance can't be an essential part of enhancing your security program, right?
Agreed.
And I think one reason why we have that opinion is exactly what you called out. There are these people out there that are saying, hey, I can get you the CMMC level 2 in 3 to 6 months. And then that's this mind frame of check the box security. They're not really going to focus on enhancing and building a proper security program. It's a drive to compliance. And when we approach this, it's not that. It's compliance as part of an overarching security program. So going back to, we're talking about the CUI and the challenges we have with classification of information from the government today. How challenging is it when we start to add in like cloud solutions and cloud services as part of things that would be in that boundary?
Yeah, the requirement is they have to be FedRAMP certified for the cloud service providers. And I always think, wow, CMMC is really difficult. And then I look at the FedRAMP requirements.
Oh, gosh.
And I lose my breath thinking about, those organizations that have gone through that rigor to become certified for FedRAMP is, wow. Yeah.
My story about FedRAMP is I was on with a customer with a company that does FedRAMP readiness. We don't do that here. It's just not what we do. But they said if you don't already have a sponsor with a contract ready, it's not worth it because it's going to take you 2 years and upwards of $2 million. And that was 5 or 6 years ago. And I can only imagine it's gone up in terms of the
I'm
cost.
sure it has.
It's unbelievable what you have to do.
Yeah, and if you take this a step further, if you're using a managed service provider, and if they have access to that enclave, or if your entire business is in scope, and some are that way, legitimately, they have to be CMMC as well. And so, you start to, unfold the pieces of this and go, okay, if I was just self-contained, that's one thing. But now if my MSP is involved, oh my goodness, they're not CMMC. So now what do I do? And so architecting this in such a way that they can't get access, but still provide some degree of assistance, that's really tough.
Yeah.
That's really tough.
Yeah, and that leads to another question. And when you're defining this boundary to effectively implement the enclave here, what are you observing? Are you seeing that these organizations are able to kind of take what they already have, develop that enclave, and then be able to essentially implement the enclave on existing systems and implementations? Or is it more of, we're kind of starting from scratch? We'll identify what needs to be in that enclave, and we'll start rebuilding that and migrating things over to essentially create a new enclave within your network.
Yeah, and actually we see both. We've got a couple $1 billion company that we're working with now that they've chosen to build out a full new company, right? New company. I'm trying to think of the code that companies have. Anyways, they're going to put a cloud presence together. They're going to be fully new Office 365 tenant, the whole thing, ground up. And what they did is they did exactly what you're saying, Oscar, is they analyzed where's our data, where does it have to be, and how do we isolate that to the smallest, network, right?
Scope.
Yeah, narrow the scope. And really, when we ask the hard questions, and I think this is where a lot of businesses are failing right on the front end, is they don't want to change. They want to wrap CMMC around what their existing processes are. And my point to them is, you're going to waste a lot of time and money, and you're not going to build your security any stronger.
Yeah.
And good luck, right? And again, this company that was bold and said, we're going to put this stuff in the cloud, and we've got a cloud service provider that's already CMMC certified. They're really, really knowledgeable people about how to harden this environment. They provide it as a service. My customer logs into it, manages it from a day-to-day perspective, builds all the processes, all the policies on top of it. And this is a really slick deal. But still, I would anticipate 18 months to build out all the processes for it. It's a lot of work. It really is.
Yeah. 800-171 is prescriptive. It's also very thorough.
Right. And with R3, it's going to get more thorough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. We've got what R3 is closed for comment. We're expecting that to come out Q1, early Q1 is what I've heard. So what I've seen is in the drafts, I actually like R3 and the way they've written it a lot better than R2. I think it's going to be a lot easier for companies to understand. But
more difficult from implementation standpoint.
Yeah, well,
but I completely agree that the language is better.
Yeah, the big changes I've seen, and that's a good point to bring that up, Brad, and I'm sure you guys have noticed other things outside of what I've seen, but it used to be allow listing and block listing, right? And they're saying we need to go to an allow listing only for applications, which I love that. I think that's a fantastic step forward. Also, they're going to require external proxy for all external connections. I love that. These are things we've been screaming about for years. There's some cryptology updates, and I think now they are going to require an independent assessment. Those are all, to me, really great revisions as part of that framework.
There was a significant, I don't remember offhand, I want to say like 40-something brand new statements in it. So, the work you're doing isn't going to go to waste, but you're just going to, you can't stop.
Right. Well, and it was kind of funny because they're still listing off 110 controls, right? And they said, well, it's really very similar. And as you said, Brad, they fit those additional 40 as objectives underneath the controls. They played some games with how that was laid out. And I was like, well, some of those really don't fit as objectives, but their goal was like this. Okay, we're still the same at 110, but you're not even close.
Yeah.
No, it's significant difference. But it's like a marketing thing almost by the government. I thought it was kind of funny, but whatever.
We're not making your life more difficult. Just don't look under the hood.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's not a pretty look.
So I have another question too. I'd like to get your thoughts on, Shawn. I think, and we've talked about this internally some before, and I think a lot of people are probably thinking about this as we head down this path of CMMC compliance, and specifically keeping those timelines you gave us, which are fantastic in our minds here. From what I understand, there's around 300,000 companies, right, that are going to require some level of CMMC compliance. But a majority of those, I believe, are level 1, right? But then you get into the level 2s and 3s. From what I've read, it's somewhere between like 75 and 85,000 companies today that exist that would require that third-party assessment. I don't know like how many C3 PALs we have. Last I've heard, it's under 30 still. And so if we really think about that, like, what do you predict? Are we going to see more people getting that certification to be able to do the assessments, or is that 2028 timeline and having everyone compliant a pipe dream?
Yeah, I think you will see a lot more C3POs. There's quite a few that are pending. I was told that as of the end of 2023, a lot of folks were in the queue ready to go, and really the certification body was holding off, really to start fresh in 2024 with more of those. The other thing, it really, again, look at the demand cycle. The demand cycle is heavy 2025. And I think a lot of organizations are going, I don't want to spend a lot of money getting the certification to be able to do all this until then, because that's when the money's there, right? And so I think it's a natural cycle. The other part of this, I think, to your point, is, once it hits the ground, even with that, right? Even let's say we've got 200 or 300 against 80,000, there's going to have to be some modification to this thing. I think they're going to catch their breath, look up and go, wow, this is not what I expected, even though, like you said, the math is there, right?
Well,
do the math.
It'll be interesting.
So,
I think my take is, there's a couple things. I think you're right on holding off, because it's going to be expensive for companies to become a 3PAL. But also the requirements to become one are pretty intense, in that, right, don't you sit through a couple of audits, and so there haven't been enough certification audits on companies to certify new 3PALs, right?
Right.
That's part of the issue. So yeah, I think you'll see an uptick as these start to roll out.
Yeah.
So you use two different terms there, and I want to clarify this too. There's a 3PAL and there's a C3PAL.
I just dropped this.
I think that, like, what's the difference? I don't know.
Certified? Nope. It's not. I just didn't say C. It's certified.
Okay.
Certified third-party audit organization.
And I only ask this from my own experience. I do see some people use the C and some people not use the C. Is there a difference? So it sounds like there's not, right?
No, it's just I didn't say it. It's easier to say 3PAL than C3PAl.
But C3PAL is more fun because it almost sounds like C3PO.
Yes.
I like that too.
My brain always goes there when I hear it. C3PO?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Not quite that fun.
Well, cool. This has been fantastic. I know we are running out of time. I don't know, Brad, if you have any other questions, or Shawn, just anything else you'd like to share with folks?
Yeah. Again, if I'm a contractor and I'm looking at this going, I think I can hold out a while yet. I'm telling you, now is the time. We're back ending into this thing, and 2 years is for some even probably optimistic. I would start the planning. At least understand where your data is, and get some costs. And there's a really good Ryan Abraham, who's another senior involved in the CMMC. He always likes to say this: you should understand the money you're going to make on this versus the cost, and make a decision fairly early on whether you even want to do this. Because let's say you're going to make $50,000 in profit, but implementation is going to cost you $200,000. Obviously, you're not going to do it.
Right.
But I think a lot of companies are walking down just to see how far this is going to go, and I think they're going to get there and go, "Wow, this doesn't make any sense for me," and I've wasted time and energy on it. And they didn't do the hard math. Do the hard math now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
100%.
great message. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks again, Shawn, for joining us today. This has been fantastic. For our listeners, if you have more questions regarding CMMC, send us an email, unsecurity@FRSecure.com, and we'll be happy to get you in touch with Shawn or Ryan and try to help you get those questions answered. We're always here to help. We like to end these episodes, Shawn, with like giving a shout out to someone and just someone we want to say thanks to or whatever, man. So a couple words of gratitude. So I'll let you go first. Who you want to give a shout out to today, Shawn?
Yeah, I'll shout out Ryan. We've worked together a lot on the CMMC and other initiatives, and dude's a rock star.
Yeah, he is. I'll second that.
Yeah.
And a pretty fun dude in general.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How about you, Brad?
Yeah, I don't know how I still struggle with this every time because it's hard to pick one person a lot of times. I think I'll give a shout out. I'll just give a shout out to I'll give it to Megan for the business impact analysis starter kit since we talked about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I think that's great. Megan's awesome too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'm going to give one to Dave Tuckman. He's one of our consultants here at FRSecure as well. And he's been doing a lot of cool stuff with his local ISACA chapter, trying to help educate people and just spread the knowledge and further our mission. And I think that's something like I've been trying to do more of this year is be more active in my local community. I think all of us should make an effort to give back to your community in some way, shape, or form. We have this knowledge that other people want, and let's volunteer a little bit of our time. And he's done a great job being a champion for information security in his local community, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yep, good one.